have imagined that the youngest player of the tournament, Gukesh, would be leading after 10 rounds at the FIDE Candidates 2024. He's on 6 out of 10 and he takes on Fabiano Caruana, the top rated player in the tournament. What a clash this is going to be. Caruana is just half a point behind Gukesh. He has the black pieces here. Gukesh adjusting his pieces and giving energy to them before the game. He has white and he will be trying to put pressure on his opponent, because if he manages to win today, he will be strengthening his chances of becoming the youngest to win the candidates and eventually perhaps the youngest world champion. Who knows? It's not a far-fetched dream anymore. There you have Fabiano Caruana entering. Handshake by him, takes his chair. Caruana hasn't had the best of events, but he is still right up there. He has been unbeaten here. It's very difficult to beat a player of Caruana's stature. And Nepo, by the way, is leading along with Gukesh. So Nepo is also on 6 points here. And there you see Fabiano adjusting his pieces. He has won the candidates before in 2018. This is his 5th straight candidates after 2016, 2018, 2020, 21, which was won candidates 2022, and now this 5th one. And just goes to show what a class act Caruana is. The games have begun. A handshake, and Gukesh has opened the games with e4 in this tournament, but here he goes for d4, showing his intention that he wants to play for a win, and Caruana responds instantly, telling Gukesh that, hey, I was expecting this move from you. This is a bit of a psychological battle here after e6. Let's see what Gukesh plays. Knight comes out to f3. He's playing the solid opening. Of course, Gukesh has played d4 so many times in his life. Now, d5 played. We are at the Queen's Gambit decline territory and Gukesh goes for knight c3. Caruana has many options. Bishop e7, bishop b4, c6. He goes for knight bd7, which is a very flexible move, keeping open where you want to keep the bishop. And Gukesh now gets into a kind of long think here. He takes on d5 after nearly 6 minutes of thinking. So Caruana's move did surprise him a bit, and maybe with Gukesh then spent his time recollecting his lines, just checking with himself what he feels like playing. And now the bishop comes out to g5. The point is, you want to put your pawn on e3, but you don't want your bishop to be behind on c1, behind the pawns. So therefore bishop g5 is very logical. h6 is played to kick the bishop away. Bishop goes here. You must notice that there is pressure on the d5 pawn because this knight is pinned. So Caruana plays her pawn to c6, bolstering the center. And now Gukesh develops his other bishop. He wants to put his bishop on d3. So a normal way to play is bishop e7, bishop d3, a castle, both castle and so on. But Caruana goes for g5, and this is a very, very interesting approach that he's taking. This is not new. This has been played before by none other than Magnus Carlsen. Grishchuk has played it, Wei, even Vidit Gujarati. The idea is to weaken your king side a bit, but you are going after this bishop, the dark squared bishop. And you can see Caruana has 1 hour 59 minutes nearly, and he gets up from his chair. This is a bit of a psychological battle that he's playing against Gukesh. After all, Gukesh is the young, inexperienced player here. But Gukesh is very, very strong mentally, and when he thinks he has a good position, he doesn't really care what his opponents think about it. So bishop d3, knight takes the bishop, and pawn takes back. H file is opened up. So here the rook opens up. The bishop is well placed, but black's biggest trump card is the bishop on f8, which will come to g7 and place itself there. It will be a very, very strongly placed piece there. Yes, he plays his bishop to g7. Gukesh here can decide between short castling or moving his queen and long castling. Long castle does seem the right way to go, especially because after short castle you are moving away your rook, which is on this beautiful open file. However, the thing is, even if you long castle with the bishop on g7, it's very difficult to attack. Knight comes out to b6 for Caruana, and now Gukesh has to decide how will he continue. He has taken the pragmatic decision of short castling, and he now plays his queen to c2, taking in control this slightly weakened f5 square. For Caruana, there's small glitches on the screen as the frames are dropping, so please bear with us over there. Caruana now settles down and he's thinking about his move. He castles it out here, and now Gukesh pushes his pawn to b4, and this is known as the minority attack. He wants to play b4 b5 and strike at the heart of this pawn chain. Caruana says, Gukesh, by all means go ahead, because whenever you play b5, I'm going to play c5, and that's the reason why Gukesh doesn't rush into it. He plays his rook to b1. Next up, he wants to go maybe a4, a5, who knows, maybe a6 or even b5. So he's keeping all the flexibility. Fabi puts his bishop on e6. For me, it feels like black's counterplay is related with this move f5, f4. But it's not so easy to engineer this move f5, f4. Let's say first Caruana goes back with his knight, taking control of the e5 square. And Gukesh now has to decide, because b5 once again is met with c5. So a5 is played, and he wants to maybe push a6, or he wants to get his knight from a4 to c5. So Caruana doesn't let Gukesh push his pawn to a6, first plays a6, and I can sense that Caruana wants to play on the queen side first, determine the structure there, and then go for his king side play, which could essentially be f5, f4, could be h5, h4, and several things there. So knight a4 played, and now Caruana has to decide, and he plays his rook to d8. Very interesting move. He just removes his rook here. Maybe his idea is, if the knight comes in, he wants to take it. Gukesh goes in with the knight and take it, and I think Caruana takes it, which is very interesting decision. The point being that after b takes c5, he wants to actually put his bishop back on c8. Yes, Gukesh takes with the b pawn, opening up his rook towards the b7 pawn. He wants to place his bishop there, perhaps. That is what he wants to do. And Caruana now thinking, he plays his pawn to f5. The pawn now finally comes up to f5, and Gukesh now puts his queen on c3. One of the ideas that Gukesh has here is that he wants to put his knight on e5 square, and that's the reason why he's played his queen to c3. Rook f7 played, and this is very interesting play by Caruana. He's not letting Gukesh clamp down on the f5 square. He got in the pawn to f5. Now with rook b4, he wants to put his other rook, put pressure here. The bishop will drop back to c8. He goes queen c7. Will Gukesh play rook? He goes rook b2, because if you go rook b1, then you would have lost the a5 pawn perhaps, but that was a small trap. Yeah, you can attack here and here, but anyway, he plays rook b2 and rook e8 by Fabiano Caruana, just improving the position of his rook. Gukesh finally enters into the black camp with his knight, and Fabi instantly picks it up. D takes e5. Now you can see already Gukesh's structure is a little bit weird. 3 isolated pawns. h5 played by Caruana. He's trying to create play here with h4. Maybe the rook swings over. Yeah, it's not easy. Gukesh now plays his pawn to f4, which is a good move, cementing the pawn in the center. Also, the f5 pawn can get weak if you take here. So that is something to keep in mind. Queen d8 played. If you had gone g4 here, then the king would have come out and the rook would have swung over. So queen d8, and Gukesh takes this insanely difficult decision of fg5. Why is this so difficult? Because look at all of white's pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are 7 isolated pawns. Now 6, because one of them fell. Wow. how does Gukesh make such decisions? Well, he realizes that he's lost something, which is the integrity of his pawn structure, but he's gained something in return, which is the f5 pawn weakness. And that is exactly what Gukesh does so well. Caruana comes back to g7, and now Gukesh can actually swing over his rook to f2. That's exactly what he does, and he's attacking the pawn on f5. So Fabi, under some pressure here, Gukesh has played well. He's put fantastic pressure. Bishop d7 played, attacking e5. Now a good move is queen b2 attacking here, and if you go bishop c8, now I take here and I'm better. But Gukesh makes the error here of queen b4. He wants to take this b7, but now Caruana can just drop back his bishop. And if the queen was on b2, it was also defending e5. Now it's not doing that, and that's the reason why here Gukesh doesn't get an advantage. Caruana equalizes after take on f5. Rook takes f5. Rook takes. So bishop takes, and the mass trades there, and now e5 pawn is hanging. So this is actually quite an important thing that Gukesh could have put pressure with queen b2, but now we are going into perhaps a queen endgame, because if you don't take now on e5, you are in big trouble. So he plays rook e5. This is the best move, and Gukesh trades it off. Rook takes e5, queen takes e5, seems logical. And now you can chop off this pawn on b7. That's exactly what he does, because if black goes queen e3, then king h2, and white is doing very well here. I mean, at least white has some chance. Black can create play with h4 there, but queen g3 is a very nice move. The point being that now you are threatening queen e1, queen h4 perpetual. So Gukesh can keep the game going with queen e7 perhaps, but he takes on c6, and that's essentially a draw for, because now Caruana can give a check on e1. Fabi just making that final bit of calculation to see that he does not have any winning chances. He goes in with a check, king h2. Queen comes back and gives a check. King g1. Check. Well, it's almost threefold repetition now. Queen h4. Both the players know that this is going to end in a draw. Gukesh doesn't look up there. Fabiano plays queen e1 and looks up, and they shake hands. A draw on the 40th move. What a game this was. Gukesh taking some